Alright, welcome to the review, or at least attempted review, of the Hypermotard 950 RVE. In the other video where I was talking, I mentioned that I was waiting for a Hypermotard to come in, and it came about 2 weeks ago, but because of real life stuff I didn't have, or real life stuff, I mean, I guess it's technically real life stuff, but basically I didn't have time because of exams and stuff, and I also had to go and get it serviced, which was all the way over in Finland. So anyways, I found some time now, and I decided I'm going to ride a bit outside of town, simply because I did try to make another video where I was talking, and I realized that riding in city traffic while talking is pretty difficult. That's something I'm going to have to do some practicing and get better at. So for now, it's nearing rush hour here, so I'm going to just ride a bit outside of the city, and hopefully I can kind of collect my thoughts. And I think it's a pretty fun route I'm going to take, and it's a route that I usually don't take on the Suzuki because it's quite bumpy, the roads are really bad. So I mean, if it wasn't obvious, the Hypermotard is a lot better at taking those kind of roads, so hopefully it's going to be more comfortable and more fun. But yeah, anyways, now I've ridden this bike. Let's see what the mileage is now. 2,284 kilometers, and I have to say that the bike has performed beyond my expectations. The things that I expected it to do well in, it has done better than I expected, and it also, the things where I was expecting it to be really bad, it hasn't been bad. I mean, it's been basically good at everything, so I'm very happy about that. So where to begin? Obviously, since I already own the Suzuki GSX S1000, it makes sense for me to try to compare it to that bike, and I also think that makes sense because the GSX S1000 is a sort of bike that's really popular these days. If we compare it to the MT-09, MT-10, the quote-unquote hyper nakeds or super nakeds or whatever. And obviously the Hypermotard is quite different, and I think, at least when I was looking at the Hypermotard, I would like more comparisons to that genre of bikes, because I think a lot of people are wondering, what are the pros and cons, basically. So I should mention, right off the bat, the star of the show when it comes to the Hypermotard is the engine. Now, I don't have that much experience with other V-twin or L-twin engines, but what I will say is that I just really love this engine. I mean, it's so it has power everywhere. It has instant power at low revs, and it just keeps pulling, and it's a lot of fun to ride. And obviously the thing about this bike is it's the engine and the like geometry of the bike that makes it so much fun. But just like right off the bat, I really love the engine. I mean, and not to forget the sound. You know, I have the stock exhaust on, and I'm really happy I kept it that way, because I really love the sound of these cans. I think it sounds perfect. It's not too loud, but it's definitely not too quiet either. So I'm very happy about those. Now, obviously comparing this engine to the Suzuki's inline 4. In my last video, I was talking about how I found the inline 4 a bit boring for like city riding, because it's quiet and you're making most of the power, you know, up top. I will say that even at like mid RPM range, I think I'd say, you know, I can feel the power difference. This is 114 horsepower, and the Suzuki is like 152, and like you can feel the 50 horsepower difference, but not in a negative way, if that makes sense. Like, basically this bike does not feel slow at all, but if you like hop off the Hypermotard and go on to the Suzuki, you can notice the difference. The Suzuki is just you know, a lot faster in a straight line. Oh fuck, I was supposed to go up here. Okay, I guess I'll turn. But yeah, anyways, as I was saying, the speed difference. I mean, we've all heard like the age-old adage, it's better to ride a slow bike fast than a fast bike slow. I have to say I don't agree with that, but there is some truth to it in my opinion. And I think basically the part of that which is not true is that riding a slow bike, like, that's not as fun as riding a fast bike. I think riding a fast bike is more fun. However, there's like a limit to how fast the bike should be. Like, if you take like a inline 4, like 200 horsepower bike, which I'm just gonna imagine the Suzuki GSX-S 1000, and then just imagine it having more power than that. Like, you better get to enjoy the acceleration, because you're in like illegal speed limit territory almost immediately. And honestly, this bike, like, is not that much different, because while the Suzuki, for instance, is faster, you're still it doesn't take long before you're above the speed limit anyways, right? So I would say, like, perfect horsepower figures, probably still like a bit below this, like at 114 for, let's say, maximum enjoyment. But I guess there's like you want to hit that intersection between like acceleration, which is obviously the faster the better, and then actually getting to like enjoy the acceleration phase without breaking the speed limit immediately. But yeah, anyways, like the Suzuki, as I mentioned, like it's faster, but I think this 114 in a twin is more appropriate power for basically all riding. But the number one thing that makes this engine more fun for like normal regular riding is just like, it's simply the fact that you have much more dynamic sound, and you can like feel the engine. It's like it feels alive under you. I mean, I used to think, basically how I feel is it kind of feels like I have a big tractor engine beneath me, while the Suzuki engine it's like basically it's a bit too smooth. Isn't it typical that like the weather was great, but then exactly the ride I'm going to, the weather is just this? Kind of annoying, but whatever. And it's also fucking cold here. But yeah, anyways, I mean, I'm sure I'll remember like more stuff about the engine, but for now I'll just say that I do like the engine on the Suzuki, but this engine and with the sound is just so enjoyable. I mean, it couldn't be better really. But yeah, anyways, the next like big thing is the ergonomics of the bike. And when I first hopped on the Hypermotard, I mean, obviously I noticed there's a difference, but the biggest difference was when I jumped back onto the Suzuki. Okay, I hope this footage isn't going to be like way too dark because of the ND filter. I totally forgot about this tunnel here. But yeah, anyways, when I hopped back onto the Suzuki after I had ridden like 1500 kilometers on this to get it serviced in Finland, I was actually like really shocked at the at the ergonomics of the Suzuki. Basically, the way you ride this is you're pretty much upright. Like you're not like adventure bike upright, but you're considerably more upright than on the Suzuki. And in my opinion, like, and I guess I'll just like say, I think that the Hypermotard, all in all, for me, is more comfortable than the Suzuki. Which I think is interesting because the Suzuki, like I remember it having, it got like a lot of praise for its comfort levels, like being a really comfortable bike. I actually think this is more comfortable, and the major like benefit of this bike compared to the Suzuki is the, oh, that's a lot of bumps, is the knee position, like the knee bend, how much knee bend you have, and the fact that you're sat more upright. And then the drawback, I suppose, is the seat. Like the seat is obviously a lot flatter on this, and less cushion, and it's just harder than the Suzuki seat. But like the reason I really felt a big difference going back to the Suzuki is just how like the knee angle is a lot sportier on that bike, and you're kind of reaching for the bars in comparison to this, where you're so relaxed in this position. So in terms of like feeling the front tire, the Suzuki is obviously better, but in terms of just outright comfort, I think this is more comfortable. I mean, like, even for longer rides, except maybe for the times where you're wearing like a backpack and doing highway stuff. I did that going to Finland, and that was really tiring because basically you the wind pressure, it's considerably more on this bike, probably because you're so upright. And with a backpack, it just became like really tiring. I felt I had to like hold on to the bike. Not that I actually had to hold on to the bike, but it just felt that way, and it was really hard to like make myself not do it. So I got pretty tired, both in my like shoulder and neck muscles and in my hands. It's literally raining. That's so annoying. but it's just the drizzle. But yeah, anyways, for so that's the ergonomics for like riding, and the seat. I was expecting the Hypermotard seat to be like really bad. I mean, like 30 minutes and you want to come off the bike. I haven't had that experience at all. My experience has been basically that if you're riding without like motorcycle pants, like if you're just riding in jeans, yeah, it's a bit hard, but it's manageable. Like maybe after an hour you want to come off the bike. If you're wearing riding pants, I think it's basically no issue at all. Like it's not uncomfortable at all. And I think also something I noticed is that, at least for me, being pretty tall, the knee angle is like way more important than the seat, like how much padding there is in the seat. Now there's now I've been talking about like the engine and the ergonomics, but actually I think the biggest difference between the Suzuki and this, and I would imagine the biggest difference between this and most other bikes in the same class as the Suzuki, is the handling. And basically what's so crazy about the handling on this bike is that it's so nimble. It's so incredibly nimble. I almost couldn't believe it when I like pitched it into the roundabout for the first time, because it's so effortless. Like it's crazy how effortless it is. And it's like you're using no force at all. It's like telepathic basically, which is funny because I considered the Suzuki to be that before, but compared to this, like the Suzuki, like I can understand why Chris Northover called it like a bit slow, heavy steering, because I mean it just is compared to a bike like this, and that makes the bike really, first of all, really easy to ride fast in, like you know, if there's a lot of corners and just around in the city. It's easy to ride this bike fast because it's so quick to like steer. It's incredibly nimble. But I mean, I can't believe there's actually like a bus riding here. But anyways, it's so incredibly fast steering, and that also makes the bike a lot of fun. Like it just feels so like playful, which is, you know, that's a lot of fun, obviously. See, so this is like the Skulsfjord, it's called, and it's like I guess, yeah, it's a village, right? I mean, I was really planning for it to be considerably better weather than this, but anyways, this video isn't about this place anyway, so I guess it's fine. But I can't believe it's raining. That's so annoying. You can never trust the forecast here. It's almost always going to be the opposite of what the like weather forecast tells you it's going to be. But yeah, anyways, and like how flickable it is makes it a lot of fun, and another thing about, I guess, would you call it handling? Basically the fact that it takes bumps so well, and that's, at least, you know, in a place like Norway or northern Norway, that's something that really deserves your consideration. Like if your roads, if you live in a place where there's a lot of bumpy roads, I mean, I think this really matters a lot, because on the Suzuki you don't want to ride over bumps at speed. Like you really want to slow it down. Hi cows. so if it's a bad road, you're stuck like just braking all the time, taking it easy. But like the Hypermotard, you just ride right over it. Like it's no issue. I basically never have to brake for anything on this bike, which is obviously very fun. It just makes the ride in general more fun, and speed bumps and stuff, like you just wanna you wanna accelerate instead of slow down, which is a lot of fun. Obviously, my plan was to stop here, but since it's raining, I think I'm just gonna literally just head back the way I came and just go back. But yeah, anyways, and I guess I should check if the lens is like has rain on it. But yeah, anyways, I guess one like drawback of this bike, if I compare it to the Suzuki, when I was riding to Finland, there's some higher like speed limits type roads, and something I noticed while riding on those roads is that, and I remember another like interviewer, I think it was Chris Northover, basically like a bike like the Suzuki, when you are doing turns, it feels like it's on rails. It's so stable. And this bike, I think it's because of the rake. I mean, that's what my father told me at least. It feels a bit like Chris Northover definitely called the Hypermotard like wandery, like as if it wanders, and I can definitely feel that. And also like very small adjustments has it does more on where you're going, so you have to be a bit more mindful at like when you're doing higher speed stuff, because if you just put your weight a bit wrong, you might like start drifting into the oncoming cars basically, and you don't want to do that. But that's mostly for like higher speed stuff. For the kind of riding that I do the most often, which is like basically mostly city riding and then some roads like this, it's no issue. And another thing is that yeah, what was that other thing I was thinking about? Oh, that's a reindeer. For but yeah, like basically when you pitch it into corners like this, the Suzuki feels a bit more planted. It feels a bit more, I can kind of trust the steering of the Suzuki. I have to throw my weight around a bit more on this, and obviously I have considerably less pressure on the front tire, but obviously there's no point in comparing these bikes on these roads, because on the Suzuki I wouldn't do these, like I wouldn't ride it like this, because there's just way too many bumps. So with the Suzuki I'm kind of limited to where I'm riding. Like either you're staying in the city, or you're doing like pre-selected rides where the roads are, at a minimum level. And that obviously like that kind of kills the joy if you're stuck like having to be really discriminatory about where you're going to ride, because you can't ride certain roads with your bike. Obviously, in the States or in, I guess, any country that doesn't have like trash roads like this, then that's not that big of an issue. But it does get, kind of annoying that you're limiting yourself quite considerably. Okay, I'm going to, I think there's like, this is like the fun section, so I'm going to try to just focus a bit on the riding. Okay, I think that's basically the fun bit's over. But yeah, anyways, like with this bike, I'm definitely not shying away from any roads at all. I mean, it, like the bumps, it just you just ride right over them, no issue. And I mean, yeah, like bumps are just fun on this bike, and they're definitely not on the Suzuki. So so that's great. And yeah, I mean, obviously the as I mentioned, like you have power everywhere. Something like a lot of people will talk about like a bike's character. And you know, my father, he owns a Moto Guzzi V7 Special, which I guess is like essentially a retro bike. And when I rode his bike, I think I kind of got like the idea behind a bike having character. And I think that bike also influenced me to buy this bike, because I really enjoy the way the twin made its power, you know, with the kind of instant torque. I think that was a lot of fun. And talking about torque, I think it's worth to mention that this bike actually makes its peak torque at like 9,000 RPM, which I think is crazy because I have never hit 9,000 RPM on this bike. So that's kind of crazy to me, that it really does just keep pulling forever. But yeah, anyways, like the character of the bike, like how it feels, the engine feels, or obviously like there's more to character than just the engine. But when I think character, I mostly think about the engine, and this is an engine that certainly has a lot of character, because of its sound, because of the vibrations, and because of how it just keeps it just keeps making power at any RPM, except like below like I think maybe 2000, around 2000, it starts to become a bit like jumpy, not that good to ride, and that's something you really notice when comparing it to the Suzuki. It's just that the Suzuki is so smooth. I was doing like a kind of difficult turn at the stoplight where you're going kind of uphill and you don't have a lot of room because of the cars coming down that hill. And in the Suzuki, or on the Suzuki rather, that wasn't really an issue. But on this bike, I forgot I had to modulate the clutch. So the engine just started kind of jumping everywhere, and I almost veered into another car. I just managed to save save myself. And that's something about this engine is you have to. People who have ridden V-twins before, this will be totally obvious for them, but you have to modulate the clutch a lot more than on the an inline 4 bike, for instance. I guess we're stuck behind this. It did stop raining, so I might hop off the bike just to take a look at it, basically. Is this a good space to do that? Yes, I think it is. Let's see here. If we just... This will probably be okay, right? Okay. Yeah, that's okay. But yeah, anyways, I had to modulate the clutch, or you have to modulate the clutch a lot more often. So let's take a look at the bike. Obviously, this is the updated design, which I'm a huge fan of. I mean, I do like the other RVE design, the old one, but I'm not a big fan of it. I think if this design didn't exist, I would probably just go for the base model and get the quick shifter with it. And for me, the SP was basically never an option, simply because it's way too expensive for what you're getting with it for my use. I also am not the biggest fan of the what you call it, the paint scheme. I think this looks considerably better. Obviously, some design details I really like about this bike. The single-sided swing arm is obviously one of them. I think it looks really great. I mean, I think the design of this bike is basically the best looking bike that I've ever seen. I think it's perfect. I heavily prefer the 950's design compared to the older models, and I also think the 950 looks, better than basically all naked bikes, and certainly the supermotos. I really like the integrated headlights. The headlight with the beak. This is probably the major thing making this bike, in my eyes, look considerably better than the older models. It just looks like someone called it a bird of prey, and I totally agree. It really looks like a bird of some kind. It also gives me. I will remind myself to put an image of this guy that I'm thinking of. If anyone ever played Rayman on PlayStation 1, the villain in that game, in the intro sequence, he's standing with some cape or something. For some reason, this headlight with the beak kind of reminds me of that guy. But yeah, anyways, I really like the design. I think this is more, I wouldn't say classy, but a bit less loud than the design for the older RVE. And Also, the fact that this has like less stiff suspension. I mean, you could tweak it obviously, but I think that benefits it for like going over bumps and stuff. While the SP is probably more suited for like racetracks and so on. But yeah, in terms of like the tech, I mean, I turned the wheelie control off. I just keep the traction control on. I think the screen is good. Obviously, it's a TFT, so it's better in that regard compared to the Suzuki. However, as I've said before, I don't think the screen matters that much, and I still stand by that. I mean, yeah, this screen is nice and all, but if this was an LCD screen, then that wouldn't impact my decision to buy this bike. I mean, it just doesn't really matter that much. But the visibility is obviously really good, and I like the way you control it. I also have the optional heated grips, which I'm really happy about, and I like the fact that you control it through the screen, so it's not like physical buttons on the steering wheel or wheel on the bars. And I guess like when it comes to like reviewing bikes, comparing bikes, you could compare specs, like you could look at the horsepowers and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, I think both this bike and the Suzuki, like both are bikes, like you're not buying those bikes because they fulfill like some practical need, you know, like if you went for an adventure tourer or like a big cruiser, like let's say a Honda Goldwing, you're going to be looking for like very specific stuff, like how much can I pack, you know, the comfort levels, how I don't know, like those kind of things would really matter. On more like sporty bikes, if you're a track rider, then that's a different thing. But for those of us who basically use these bikes just as have fun machines and maybe want to go on the occasional trip, then I think that you know, the practical stuff isn't that important. It's about how fun is the bike to ride, and how much do you like to look at the bike. I also think reliability is really important, and I guess I haven't touched on that. I mean, I haven't had any issues with this bike, but it's still young. I know that Ducati doesn't have as good of reputation like the Japanese brands, but I did go for like the extended warranty because being so far away from a Ducati dealer, and but then committing to like actually getting the services done on time and stuff, I think that's going to be worth it. And since the bike is like a lot more comfortable than I thought it would be, I mean, like touring on this bike, if you're going to pack light and have like an ergonomic backpack, it's no issue. Like there was some YouTuber that made, I didn't even watch the video, but the premise of the video was basically that you know, you don't need to buy a touring bike to tour. You can tour on whatever bike you have. And after going to Finland on this bike, I'm starting to agree with that sentiment a lot, because you know, looking at this bike, I think most people would say that, like, obviously this, you can't tour on this. This is like the least tourable bike there is. But I didn't have any issue touring with it. I mean, it was the main issue with riding long stints on this bike was that the fact that I had like a school backpack that just killed my back. Now, wearing that backpack with the stuff in it, obviously that wouldn't be necessary on a touring bike, and even if I did do that on a touring bike, the windshield would probably alleviate a lot of the discomfort. But the core idea here is that I can easily tour on this. All I need is ergonomic backpack, that so my back doesn't get killed, and then there's no issue. Like, the seat is comfortable, the riding position is comfortable, the engine is obviously, you know, it just pulls forever. You're never gonna have a power issue on the highway. So it's great for touring. And once you arrive, like, let's say you're going to a city and you're renting a hotel or whatever, because you probably shouldn't be bringing a tent. You don't have the space for that. Once you're there, you're gonna really appreciate the fact that you have this bike to ride around on, because riding this in town is it's just so perfect for that kind of riding. And personally, I would much rather tour on this and then have this for the twisty roads on the journey and in the cities, than tour on like a Harley Davidson and then having to deal with that bike when there's bumpy roads, when there's twisty roads. I mean, obviously you can have fun with a Harley on twisty roads, but not on twisty bumpy roads. That's gonna suck. And in city, like, riding. Now, my father always tells me, like, yeah, but haven't you seen like the Motoman guys showing, you know, these small girls riding on the big Harleys, and they have no issue doing like slow speed maneuvers. And to that I say, it's just not about that. It's about how fun it is. And riding what is it, like 800-pound bike, 400 kilos or whatever, riding that sort of bike in the city, it's not fun. It just isn't fun. Let's see, I guess I'll end the review here. I probably don't have that much more to say, but I will continue to film and record and take a little stroll, or ride into town rather, and see what's up. We're definitely in straight up rush hour, so it's going to be I guess it's going to be an illustration of how it is to ride this bike in the in traffic, in city traffic. But yeah, did I have anything more to talk about? Because that's basically like what I was starting to think about, is that there's kind of like a let's see here. There's kind of like a limit to how much there is to say about a bike, and comparing a bike as far as like objective stuff goes. I think that there's a lot more interesting stuff about how the bike makes you feel, and I guess the review will continue, just because I just realized that that's one of the like major things about this bike, is how it makes you feel, and that's going to be different for different people. And I guess, like, when I bought the Suzuki, a pretty like important consideration for that was the fact that it had an inline 4 like somewhat screamer engine, and that mattered to me because when I grew up, that was the kind of motorcycles that I thought were cool. And obviously, like, my father, he doesn't like those bikes, because I guess those were very much not cool when he grew up, and that was a major consideration for me. I wanted a screamer bike, I mean, obviously I still love the sound of a screamer bike. However, I've come to appreciate more the sound of this bike and how it like delivers its power and stuff. But when we're talking about how the bike makes you feel, I have to basically like I have to recall back to when I decided to get my license. I remember I was thinking like, I should get the motorcycle license. And that sounded a bit ridiculous, but basically I remember thinking that. And when I started to like have those thoughts about getting the motorcycle license, I became a bit more like aware on what kind of bike I would like to have. And I saw a bike. I have no idea like which bike this was. It could have been like a Husqvarna or a KTM Supermoto, or it might have been, you know, an older Hypermotard. But basically it was some sort of like Supermoto bike, and it was just, you know, hauling ass, and I could hear that like brap kind of sound when you're giving it gas, and I was thinking like, damn, that sounds so sick. And it's so I thought it was really cool that it kind of looked like a freaking moped, but had that like sound and I guess speed. But yeah, anyways, like and that experience which I had at that point certainly influenced like my my decision to get this bike quite a lot. Because I just thought it was cool. I can't even like explain it. Why do I think that's cool? I have no idea. But yeah, that did influence me quite a lot. Now, what was I gonna say? Another video that, no, not another video, another like thing that influenced my decision was I saw a video of this guy called Ducati Rider New York, I think it was. I can't remember how I like got onto his channel. I probably had, at this point I'd probably seen the Hypermotard, and I might have been like googling the name and stuff. But basically he was riding around on his Ducati Monster, and he came like across a guy on a Hypermotard. I think that was one of the older ones, I'm not sure. But you could see the Hypermotard guy in front of him, and I thought it looked so sick. The fact that how tall the bike was. Like how he had to like almost reach with his legs to reach the ground, and how he was sat so tall in traffic. I thought that looked really cool as well. Yeah, I guess it's like a combination of those things that made me really, and the design obviously. I mean, as I mentioned, I think the Hypermotard looks amazing. Now, the supermoto genre, which I guess like the Hypermotard does not fall into, it's quite gate-kept. Like you'll hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, that's not a supermoto. This is a supermoto. The KTM 690 isn't even a supermoto because it has to be like this and that and so on." And I guess a question is like, why didn't I get one of the, shall we say, actual supermotos? Well, the KTM, well, okay, first of all, one issue is that, as I mentioned in another video, I do care quite a bit about like the speed of a bike and horsepower figures. Now, with the experience I have now, I don't think this would really matter if I were to buy a bike, like go back in time, but knowing this, because I think the supermotos, like the KTM, Husqvarna, and those, like they certainly have enough horsepower. I think they're like, what, 80 horsepower, 70, 80 horsepower. That's easily enough for this kind of bike. So, and I know those, you know, you can take them to the highway and they'll pull fine. something that I think is a big benefit with this bike compared to those is the physical size of the bike. Like, me being both tall and quite heavy, I think that the bike, like, I would probably, I'm not sure, but I think I'd probably look kind of like ridiculous on a smaller bike. So I think looks wise this looks really well, and as I mentioned, like, I just think there's like such a big difference on like the design. Like, I think the Ducati Hypermotard visually looks so much better than those other bikes. Obviously you're really paying for it as well, but yeah, like, I could easily see myself owning like a Husqvarna 701 if it weren't for the fact that I think it's like physically a bit too small for me. If it weren't for that, I think maybe I wouldn't buy the Ducati, but I think I probably still would, just because of the design part. Something that I've been starting to like think about a bit more after getting this bike is that, my thinking was that I can't have only the Hypermotard. Like, that's why I bought the Suzuki in the first place instead of the Hypermotard, because the service points are so far away, and it's an Italian bike. I don't trust the reliability. But like, my experience now is that the bike feels, it feels reliable. I guess that sounds a bit silly, but like, with the added warranty and the fact that I haven't had any issues with the bike, and that the bike is more comfortable and more like tourable than I thought it would be, I'm starting to kind of get like, did I think wrong when thinking that I couldn't have this as my only bike? Or I'm not even starting to think it, I'm definitely thinking it. And I guess only time will show what I think about like actually having both this and the GSX S1000. This, obviously at this point, the bike is new, so I shouldn't be surprised that I prefer riding this. However, it's kind of hard for me to imagine ever wanting or like preferring to... Dude, is this guy going to the left? There's no way, right? There's like actually no way. Dude. Yeah, he is. That's crazy. Anyways, it's hard for me to imagine ever preferring the Suzuki for like city stuff like this, because this bike is just so much more playful around the corners, nimble, easier to ride, more comfortable for this kind of riding. I mean, certainly more comfortable for me at least. And the engine is just so much more fun around town because of this. Like, you get that sound when you, like, I'm putting around in first gear, and instantly when you turn the throttle, you get a really like what do you call it, addictive sound. I mean, like, that's in every gear, at every RPM, the sound is so good. And then obviously it's also really like forceful torque. That's something that I haven't mentioned yet. While the GSX S1000, as I mentioned, is like, you can feel it, that it's a faster bike, even at like mid RPMs. But the difference in like how it delivers power, and I guess this kind of goes back to like the character stuff I was talking about. This is so much more violent because it's a twin, right? So this bike, it basically like it janks you forward while the Suzuki is like very, very smoothly dragging you forward. And a bike being like smooth, generally speaking, won't be as fun as a bike being like more violent. I mean, this obviously, like, that really depends on the rider. Like, me personally, I definitely prefer the more like, let's say, violent power delivery. I mean, when I ride, especially like in the city, I want to have, like, okay, basically riding in the city generally isn't the most fun thing, right? Because you're just kind of putting around slowly. So, but that's also how most people ride their bikes most of the time, right? No matter what they try to tell you. If they ride their bike a lot, it's going to be a lot in the city, unless they don't even live in the city. So having a lot of fun riding in the city is important for me, and that's how, like, basically the sound and how the power is delivered. That's basically why that's so important to me. And there's just no getting around that the Suzuki, you know, that bike becomes the most fun once you are above like 70 kilometers an hour in first gear, which is, you know, that's you're not gonna be doing a whole lot of that in the like regular city environment, right? So I think the use case for my GSX-S 1000 is going to be like when I'm riding sort of longer rides on good roads. That's probably going to be the main use case for the Suzuki, or if I'm just in the mood to ride an inline 4, because obviously, you know, I really like the sound of inline 4s. And I mean, it's not like they're not fun to ride. I just think this is more fun for most of the riding I do. And obviously, you know, owning, okay, I probably could have taken that, but yeah, owning two bikes is obviously like very let's say luxurious, so it's kind of hard to justify owning two bikes if one is kind of just sitting there. So if that does end up happening, then I'll have to basically sell one of them. There we go. I said sell one of them. I know which bike I would sell, and that's the Suzuki. I really don't want to sell the Suzuki also because I have this like kind of irrational, sentimental, like, it's my first bike, right? So it would be a lot of fun to be able to hold on to that bike for as long as possible. And obviously, if something were to happen to this bike, then it's a long way to. It's, as I said, like the nearest service point is 9 hours away, while Suzuki has an authorized dealer in town. So that's a pretty big difference there. But yeah, anyways, like, I think this bike, it looks really cool. It's a lot of fun for like city riding, street riding, and kind of riding in the twisties. And that's basically why I think it's it's hard for me to imagine like a better bike for my use case. I mean, honestly, it's impossible for me to imagine that. No, it's not impossible to imagine. Imagining isn't like that hard, but rather it's I don't think that bike has been made yet. I guess would be better. So anyways, now we're riding through Tromsø Centrum. Okay. and it's quite nice weather. And I guess I also have like been through most of my talking points. So this is probably the point where I can turn this review into just a straight up vlog. Let's see. Now how would I turn a review into a vlog? I have no idea. Also because I should probably have like a prepared topic to talk about. Although I generally don't need a topic to be able to ramble, and I guess I did mention something which is kind of a pet peeve for me, because this is like an ongoing, I guess, a point of contention with my father, which is that he's always talking about, oh, you should buy, you know, this sort of bike and not that sort of bike. And what he's talking about, you know, almost always is how practical the bike is. How comfortable is it? How much stuff can you bring with you? So in his mind, you know, the ideal bike is like a Honda Goldwing or something like that. And obviously, for my use case, that would be just like a totally ridiculous bike. To have like a Goldwing to go just riding around the city streets like this doesn't make any sense. And also for like more like a bit faster riding, it also doesn't make any sense. So for me, it's like, obviously it's like very obvious that that's a wrong bike. But my kind of postulate is basically that I think this goes for a lot more people than people realize. Basically, I think that there are so many people that get bikes like adventure bikes, you know, like the I don't know, like the Honda Africa Twin, or maybe the not like an adventure bike, but like the Tracer 9, or yeah, like bikes like that basically. And the thing is that obviously like a Tracer 9, that's the kind of bike where it's like it has such good like handling and stuff that you're not really losing out on anything by having that as your bike, like compared to having a Goldwing where you're like struggling and really suffering in the city, let's say. But I think that a lot of people are like basically buying bikes that are lacking in like usability for their own. Let me rephrase that. I think a lot of people are buying bikes that are overkill for their use case. So basically, for instance, the Ducati Multistrada, you know, you're paying, it's the same engine as this bike, and you're paying, you know, considerably more to get it. And I think it's also considerably less like good looking, and also considerably less capable handling wise for urban riding. Now what you're getting is obviously more comfort and the ability to pack a bunch of stuff. Now I think a lot of people are basically like presuming that, oh well, you can't tour on a Hypermotard, so if you want to use the bike for touring, well then you should get the Multistrada. Well, I would say that the the Multistrada is worse at it's worse at riding in the city than the Hypermotard is at touring, basically. I would rather tour with the Hypermotard once in a while than to use the Multistrada for like most of my city riding. And obviously the Multistrada, like, you can easily ride it in town, right? Like, there's no issue. However, it being easy or doable or whatever, in my mind, that doesn't make it I wouldn't call it capable. And that's kind of the same way as like like, you would never say the Hypermotard is like a capable touring bike. That's a weakness of the bike, if you want to use it like that. And that goes both ways. But the difference is, and now I'm like actually getting to the the point I was going to talk about. You can see how I'm struggling with like talking in traffic. It's so hard. But anyways, like, the point I'm trying to get across here is that most people spend way more time riding in the city than they are doing touring. And I see so many touring bikes, like the BMW rather, GS, like that's probably one of the most popular bikes in the world. There's so many of those bikes going around, and it's like, I know that these guys aren't touring with them all the time. That's not to say that, you know, the guys owning a GS aren't touring on them. I'm sure like a lot of them are, and then a lot of them aren't. But even those who do tour on them overwhelmingly does like city riding. So it doesn't make sense to me that so many people are riding those bikes, because to me it just makes more sense to, for me for instance, like have this Hypermotard and have fun with it, ride it, you know, for having it be the perfect bike for 90% of my use, and then for the remaining 10%, it'll do. I can do touring on it, there's no issue. If I were going to do like some hardcore touring where I would need to like pack a tent and stuff, yeah, then I'd need a second bike. But how many people are doing that? I mean, I'm not saying nobody is, but like, what percentage of people owning a GS or owning a Goldwing or owning a Tracer 9 or whatever, Tracer 7? I would say like a minority, I think. So I think more people should consider bikes like this. Now, of course, the naked bike genre is pretty damn big.